Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. I can hardly believe this is the 317th weekly program called Forum, and we've never yet discussed the issue that we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be looking at a very important reality in Fresno called the Office of Independent Review. Back in the day, it was going to be the IPA. We have a committee that worked on it for 25 years. But right now, we're going to look at the history of this wonderful project that has given us the guest that we'll be visiting with next week, Eddie Aubrey, who is the current Officer for Independent Review here in our city of Fresno. We have three very special guests who have been working at this a long time. To my left is Elie Bluestein, who in other moments is dressed as a raging granny, which means she's a pacifist grandmother who is working for peace and justice every single way she can, every day of her life. Next to her is the Reverend Walt Parry, who happens to have been at one point the executive director of the Fresno Metro Ministry, and in that capacity was immensely involved in the long, hard, arduous work to bring us an OIR here in Fresno. And directly across from me is Matilda Rangel, who is one of those wonderful people, salt of the earth, who have been committed to this cause of social justice throughout her life, and most especially now in this effort to bring to Fresno an independent police auditor. Thank you very much, panel, for being here today. And I wonder if each of you could briefly tell me why it is that oversight to the public, to the PD department of Fresno is so important to you. Elie, why are you into this issue?
Well, I had a transformative experience. I was on the Human Relations Commission. Well, it was formed because of the issue of discrimination against Latinos in the area. Only that time they were called Chicanos. And I happened to be at the city council when the issue was raised, and there was a request made to do something about it. And Walt was there. He was part of that group. And as a member of the Human Relations Commission, I was asked to deal with it. And in doing so, I learned what was really going on in Fresno.
And that became your turning point?
Well, I knew something had to be done about it, and I couldn't let go until it was done.
And thank you for having stuck with that this many years.
Oh, it's very moving.
Walt, where does your passion come for this oversight?
The people in our community are our most important resource, and we need to do everything we can for the well-being of our population and of our community. And it's extremely important that all the people can fulfill their full positive potential, and this is one way to help safeguard and to move that forward.
Matilda, what got you into this issue?
Okay, like Elie and Walt, I go back several years, and we were instrumental in establishing the Human Relations Commission. Right now, I am a member of the Central California Criminal Justice Committee, and I am the treasurer. The group started in approximately the year 2000, okay? Being a member of several organizations has allowed me to voice my opinion on concerns that needed to be addressed. One of the issues we have worked on continuously is getting the PD oversight here in Fresno.
Well, I am so glad that the three of you and many others have been involved for a long time. Walt, you seem to be the one with the biggest, longest picture that you can draw for us. Can you paint something of 25 years of this struggle?
And I would just say that these other people have been the ones to make this happen. That the background, I go for 25 years, the last 10, 11 years, I've been somewhat on the sidelines, although my heart has been with their effort. I think of this as kind of a long-distance, long-term relay race. And over the years, many individuals and many organizations have taken different parts at different times. When I came here in 1985 to Fresno, there was a coroner's inquest report that was one of the first things that I read related to the shooting by the police of a young Latino man who was distraught and considered suicide, did have a gun. The family called the police. And unfortunately, at one point, the young man evidently lowered the gun and the police shot him. I think there may have been 60 rounds. And this was Mrs. Rangel's son. So it brings back many sad and tragic memories. But there was a committee that I think Fresno Metro Ministry, and this is before I got here, organized for a comprehensive investigation. And out of that was probably a very lengthy coroner's report of what had happened, what were some of the dynamics, who was in charge, and primarily from the perspective of how can we prevent these types of things from happening in our community, because from everyone's perspective, it is always sad and always tragic. Because of that, Mrs. Rangel kept getting phone calls from parents whose sons and daughters had been arrested by the police, and the sons and the parents wanted to know, are my sons and daughters okay? So what you often would do is to call me.
Yes.
And I would go as a clergy person to the jail for a pastoral visit to these young people that were in the jail, and to talk to them about what had happened from their perspective, and also, are they okay, or what type of injuries do they have, does it look like there was excessive force. Also related to that, I then sometimes would go into the neighborhoods where these incidents had occurred and talk to neighbors and other people who may have been there at the time. And, you know, from my own perspective, I found that many of the accusations of excessive force seemed to be truthful, and in some cases I found that they were not. And I think that that's really what was happening at the time, that sometimes there was accusations that did not have any basis, and other times they definitely did have basis. Then, unfortunately, there was a second very tragic shooting. Happened to be the cousin of the young man who had died previously. He had been drinking. I think it had been reported that he had a gun, and the police went to the house, and as I recall, he answered the door with a gun in his hand, and at some point started to lower the gun, and then the police shot and killed him. Not knowing what his intentions were or what was going to happen. After that shooting, the Fresno Police Department asked Fresno Metro Ministry if we would mediate between the family and the Latino community and the police department, of which we agreed to. I engaged the services of Ron Clausen, who was with Fresno Pacific University Center for Peacemaking and Conflict Studies. And we had 3 meetings, I think, with the family and representatives of the Latino community, with the police, and I think those 3 sessions were very helpful. At that point, the family of the young man decided they didn't want to move any further, but then there were continued mediation that was, I think, coordinated by the Chicano Civil Rights Network with the Chicano Latino community and with the police department. And then the Human Relations Commission was formed, and it was formed to both celebrate our diversity, mediate conflict, and to identify and address patterns of discrimination in our community. And as Elie mentioned previously, she was on that commission. And as I recall, you were chair of the subcommittee that set up 2 community forums. And in those forums, people from the community came to express their concerns, their experiences related to a lack of either good communication with the police department, or in some cases what they felt was extreme excessive force and racist discrimination. And there in the first session that was under the leadership of Ron Clausen, the mayor and city council members were asked to repeat what they had heard people saying, to make sure that those leaders in our community were aware of both the feelings and the content of what people in our community were saying, who felt they had no opportunity to say things and to be heard. Then an ombudsman was hired for the city of Fresno and funded for several years. Unfortunately, the duties of the ombudsman were somewhat vague, but at least people had someone to call when there were concerns related to police department, although that ombudsman also served as ombudsman for all city operations. And David Bearhart served in that capacity. David still lives in our community in Madera. Then was the meeting, one particular meeting that I remember that I think I helped bring about one meeting that was at the Unitarian Church, but that was the beginning of the Central California Criminal Justice Committee. And at that point, it's these people that you on both sides of me and others that you hear from in the other program and others who kind of took on from there and to where we are today, which I see is still a part of the ongoing relay race so that we can have to know that things are as they should be for the best interest of all the people of our community.
Thank you, Walt, for a really gallant effort to share a large panoramic look at a deep issue. And we may have just touched the surface on events, but we definitely have them in some sort of a parameter. I wonder if Elie or Matilda right now has one part. You know what we're going to do right now? We're going to need to take a break. And when we come back, we'll let Elie and Matilda flesh out some of Walt's initial insights. So we'll be back. Please stay tuned, and in 1 minute, join us for part 2 of our program. Thank you.
You can go next.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
Hello again, and welcome to the second part of our first program on the police oversight here in the city of Fresno. We just heard a very good summary of many years of an effort to bring justice and review to this to the city of Fresno regarding police action. Matilda, where would you like to start us off in the second part of the program based on maybe something Walt said?
Well, I would like to add that before the tragedy of '85, I would have people come and they approached me and said, well, what's so unusual about that? I mean, other people have lost their sons and no one has come forward to see what can be done. So that was, I think, the beginning of my participation in all this.
And Elie, help us appreciate where you joined in and where your own work definitely seconded all of this.
Well, Walt said that I was the vice chair of the Human Relations Commission, and my task was to deal with this issue, which had been brought to the city council. And we had the forum. People showed up at 7 o'clock, and it went until 12. And the people weren't through testifying. And we had a second one. And that was how I learned what was going on in my community, because I didn't know about all this. I heard stories of people being accosted by the police. I was shocked. And so the commission members got a transcript of what had been said at the hearings, at the forum, and that was when we went to we were asked for a report. And in the report, we called for a civilian review board. And the police chief wouldn't hear of it. He hit the ceiling. Nobody was going to interfere with his, police affairs. And that was when they agreed for an ombudsman, which I was against. I knew it wouldn't work, but I was outvoted. But we also made some recommendations, and one of them was for a sensitivity training for the police, and they did it. And the police resisted at first, but they did it, and they appreciated it. Afterwards, they said it was a good thing. And there were some other things, too, that were recommended. Anyway, so that was what happened. That was kind of the end of that. The ombudsman was hired and never did do anything significant because he had no powers. He was able to ask the police what had happened. That was it. He had no power to go over investigations, or we didn't know what investigations were taking place, but kind of ended there. And then I left the commission because I left the country for a while. But anyway, when I returned, I got a call from somebody in West Fresno, a mother, who said that there was a lot of harassment of young men in the African American community by the police. And summer was coming, and there was going to be an incident because they would get angry, and she was very worried. And could we do something about it? And she knew that I had been on that committee before, on the Human Relations Commission. So I called Walt, and he knew about it because his sons were being harassed, African American sons. So I didn't know if it was happening or not. And so then we called other people. We called the Human Relations Commission, which still existed. We called Rabbi Siegel at the time, who was very good, and other people in the community. And we set up a meeting. And the first meeting was at Beth Jacob Synagogue. And we met there for a couple of days, a couple of meetings. We were meeting every other week because people kept coming. Hordes of people from the Asian community, youth, young people. We put it in the paper, I think, and people came. And then we started meeting at the Unitarian Church. And Walt was facilitating these meetings. He was a superb facilitator. We did brainstorming of what was wrong. People told about what were the problems, and he organized them. And then we brainstormed about what should be done about it. And one thing we did was we met with the police chief at the time, Winchester. And Dyer was there too. He was an assistant or something. You remember all this, Walt? Anyway, and Winchester was very forthcoming. We talked about the profiling that was taking place, very serious. And at that time, it was going on all over the country, in New Jersey, and Chicago, and LA. And so he admitted that it was true, and it was going on in Fresno. And we wanted him to statistically identify what was happening. And at that time, they got a grant from the state to do that. Wow. And they did. And we saw that report. And of course, it definitely showed that it was happening. And so, of course, collecting the information meant that they would be doing something about it, hopefully. There were other things that we asked for, and which he agreed to. Some of the complaints that people had, that when they were stopped by the police wouldn't identify themselves. They didn't know who was being, who they were talking to, or tell them what the complaints were. You know, they were accosted or called out, but never told why, what was happening. So there were some of these things that he agreed to, but meanwhile we started doing other things because this was happening all over the country. We started to find out what other cities were doing about it. And one of the people who was really good on that is Gloria Hernandez, who for most of the time was really a tremendous part of this whole undertaking, and would come with all kinds of suggestions from stuff she had researched. And we found out that many of the cities in California had organizations that did some kind of police oversight. So we held some forums in the City Hall. The Human Relations Commission sponsored them for us. And we had somebody from Oakland come, somebody from San Francisco, Sacramento, Riverside,
San Jose.
and San Jose, right. So do you want to tell a little bit about that? Or?
No, you're doing just fine, Elie.
Okay. And so we heard that there were different models. And it was most interesting. And Lucille Wheaton, who was not able to come to meetings, she was elderly, but she did a chart of we gave her all the information of the different types and compared them. And everybody was very excited about the San Jose model because San Jose was about the same size as us, had about the same size police department, maybe a little small, a little bigger, but it had been going for a while and it was successful. And she was a terrific woman. She really put it on the line about what changes she had made and what she was able to do as an IPA. Recommend policies so that they could change the way things were being done. And she gave examples. And so when we left that forum, Chief Dyer said to me, I could live with that, which was very, we thought very positive.
Can you date this a little?
Yes,
That this
it was
moment with Chief
2000.
Dyer.
It was 2001.
2001. Wow.
2001, a long time ago, and he had her come back to speak with the Police Officers Association, with the police officers, and later on, Audrey had her come back, because. So then we started. Started doing a proposal for what we wanted to have happen in Fresno, and we tried to get it approved by the city council. But to get support, that's where we really worked hard. We visited every organization in town, including the Chamber of Commerce, and we got sponsors you wouldn't believe. The San Joaquin School of Law. I could read off the list, but you don't want me to do that.
Well, to mention a few would be good, only because to give certain credit where credit is due.
Well,
So both mayors we
the League of
want to
Women
give.
Voters was with us
the League
for
for
beginning,
sure.
Metro Ministry, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, the NAACP, the La Raza Lawyers,
San Joaquin College of Law.
San Joaquin College of Law,
Fresno Center for Nonviolence.
Fresno Center for Nonviolence, professors from CSUF, the Peace and Conflict Studies program, the African American teachers at City College.
It seems like many groups were supportive, and maybe the one, there were two groups, maybe not, is the Police Officers Association.
We had when we had a meeting, when we finally got a proposal that was given to the city council, and it was done by Mayor Autry. We had over 30 people there testifying in favor of the proposal, and a lot of these people were there.
Wow.
The only ones testifying against it were people, representatives of the Police Officers Association, and their objection was that it wasn't needed because they already had a Police Internal Affairs Bureau. They accused us of being a bunch of radicals, that we didn't represent the people.
We had a hidden agenda.
We had a hidden agenda. But finally, after presenting it to the city council for 5 times and having it turned down, Autry took a survey, had a survey done, and more than 50% of the people were in favor of it. And later on, when Swearingen took a survey, more than 75% of the people favored it. But in between, we had a petition drive. We handed in hundreds of petitions. We worked with a mediator from the State Attorney General's office came to Fresno to meet with us and the police chief. And we worked out a new complaint form because the other one was so bad that our lawyer said it wasn't even valid.
Wow.
And so Debbie Reyes, and especially Gloria Hernandez, and Matilda worked with Chief Dyer to come up with a new complaint form.
Wow.
And it's here, and we had it translated into 4 languages, and with an instruction booklet, and we had it placed in the 10 community centers, and a lot of this we got from exploring what other communities were doing. So all of this work we were doing in between.
This is amazing that we're learning in this 1/2 hour so much of the work that went into creating what is basically a compromise. It's nothing in the world, it seems, is perfect, but it is definitely the fruit of so much collaboration, so much effort of investigation and research. Walt, there was one thing you did want to add. You said towards the end, admitting 2 things that you would have dug in for, and they really are not necessarily policy right now, but it's good that you would let us know 2 things that were really strong commitments of yours.
I pulled out from my computer this morning my testimony in 2009, I think it was February, and I pushed 2 points, neither of which was included. One is that it does need to include policy and best practices, because a lot of times it's prevention that is really important, not just what happened here at that point. And I hope in some way that can be incorporated into to the work now. And the second was, I thought it was extremely important that the person have the authority to conduct his or her own investigations. So those were 2 points that were my 2 only points that I was pushing, neither included, but possibly as we move on, and again, I see this as a relay race that continues to make this a better community for all of our people, and that we can find ways to meet those goals in some way, at least what they would achieve.
Elie, there was a final thought you were going to maybe share by reading. We have about a minute,
Okay.
so maybe you have
We're
to...
about halfway through what we did, but anyway.
Oh, yes.
There was a couple of other people. I want to say that Rebecca was with us almost from the beginning, and that Cedric Hardiman from United Black Men was with us at the beginning, and he was kind of like a co-chair in that he signed a lot of the letters that we've worked very hard for more than 10 years to achieve a modicum of police oversight in Fresno. 1 officer of independent review. He was supposed to have a staff of 2, but there is only 1. There is no one to handle the outreach part of the job. He is busy monitoring the complaint investigations. Have we set him up for failure? San Jose has a staff of 5 and a citizens advisory committee of 8. One city has a police auditor who is allowed to subpoena witnesses, which is not even possible under present California law. In general, it seems that offices which have citizen components, such as an advisory board, achieve greater success because they serve as an outreach into the community as well as a sounding board for the various ethnic and interest groups, and also as a support group for the auditor, who will need it if he is really trying to change procedures and policies and attitudes. We have opened the possibility for significant changes in the way justice and safety are dealt with in Fresno. The auditor's yearly report should include recommendations for improving police operations. It will be interesting to see what changes, if any, Mr. Aubrey recommends and how they are received.
Thank you very much. We'll be back next week to follow up with Mr. Eddie Aubrey. Till then, God bless.